Okay, so before we wrap up our discussion of animals and animal behavior, I want to note two things. The one is that of all the dangerous animals that the father mentions and teaches the boys to respect, he also notes that it's humans, man himself is the most dangerous animal in all the zoos. And he gives instances where humans, poison or provoke or torture animals in the zoo. So really it is, humans themselves which are often the most vicious predators. And we don't necessarily always think that way, but we are on sort of the top of the food chain. And our actions again can be very destructive to animals. So humans are deadly creatures, and the line between humans and animals will be blurred over and over again within the way that Pi sort of describes events. And we already saw him partake in anthropomorphism when he projected human qualities onto the sloths that he studies in his zoology degree. But this idea of anthropomorphism will become an integral part of his father's lessons to him as a young man. So one of the lessons that he teaches Pi is that he should not anthropomorphize animals. To do so is to risk treating a wild animal as if it was domesticated and it thought and behaved like a human would, when in reality, wild animals are wild animals, and they will be ferocious if provoked. So I'll just read you the passage. This is on page 34, chapter 8. So this is the lesson about anthropomorphism that Pi's father shares with his son. So Pi says, "But I learned at my expense that father believed there was another animal even more dangerous than us, and one that was extremely common too, found on every continent, in every habitat, the redoubtable species Animalius anthropomorphicus, the animal as seen through human eyes. We've all met one, perhaps even owned one. It is an animal that is cute, friendly, loving, devoted, merry, understanding. These animals lie in ambush in every toy store and children's zoo. Countless stories are told of them. They are the pedants of those vicious, bloodthirsty, depraved animals that inflame the ire of the maniacs I have just mentioned, who vent their spite on them with walking sticks and umbrellas. In both cases, we look at an animal and see a mirror. The obsession with putting ourselves at the center of everything is the bane not only of theology or theologians, but also of zoologists. I learned the lesson that an animal is an animal, essentially and practically removed from us. Twice, once with father and once with Richard Parker." So Pi is sort of taught not to view animals as possessing human characteristics, but he does this over and over again, really. And we all do this. It's when we sort of say, or we treat animals, especially, dogs and cats or, the household animals that we have, we see them more as, people in some cases with, human personalities, rather than, domesticated wild animals. So we sort of project our feelings or ideas or personality traits onto our animals. Um, you know, there's this article that I read where it's like, does your pet actually love you, or is it just relying on you for food? But we like to believe our pets, our pet cat or dog, loves us unconditionally and has feelings of, mutual respect and love and all these kind of human feelings for us. But in reality, they might just like, that this person who they're living with is feeding them and those kind of practical concerns that an animal would really care about. So we do have a tendency in our, human relationships with animals to anthropomorphize them, so to give human characteristics to animals. And in depictions of literature, we see this often. We saw it in Art Spiegelman's Mouse. So he was using mice to depict human characters or human beings, and gave human personality traits and characteristics and feelings to mice. And in Disney cartoons, like the example here is the Robin Hood cartoons, where Disney's sort of using animal characters, but they have like human attributes. So they're getting married in this case. So something that animals would never do in reality, but we sort of always use animals sort of as a stand-in for humans. If you think about fairy tale or fables, or multiple examples, even Little Red Riding or something like that, a fairy tale, there's this idea that animals often stand in for human characters. So it's got this sort of allegorical level as well to it, where a lot of the literature that we study and stories that we tell children, we might use animals in place of humans, and it's a way to sort of teach lessons or share wisdom or stories, but kind of softens the edges. So in Little Red Riding Hood, instead of having a creepy stranger approach a young girl in the forest, we use a wolf. And put them in maybe a top hat or something like that. So it's a way of sort of anthropomorphizing somebody who's like a predator preying on a young girl. And Little Red Riding Hood's sort of like the prime example of that, where you would have an anthropomorphized villain, in this case a big bad wolf. But it's a way of that we tell stories and share wisdom, and our fairy tales, our fables, our animations will use animals in place of humans all the time. So you see it in we saw it in Mouse as an allegory for ethnic groups involved in World War II. If you read George Orwell's Animal Farm, he sort of uses animals as allegory for human historical figures in that one as well. So the presence of animals and the way that we anthropomorphize them, there's a long history of doing that in literature and film.